Glad you could join us today on Earthfile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. Plants and animals are incredibly important for the health of our planet. The delicate balance in our ecosystems relies on biodiversity, and wildlife crimes pose a great threat to this. From hunting elephant for ivory to smuggling endangered plant species, wildlife crimes often span many national borders. The World Wildlife Crime Report 2020, launched recently by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, emphasizes the threat that wildlife trafficking poses to nature and the biodiversity of the planet. Another report, also by the United Nations, says the world has lost 178 million hectares of forest since 1990. The Global Forest Resources Assessment Report says most of the forest loss happens in sub-Saharan Africa and in South America, and Southeastern Asia losing about 1 million hectares of forest every year. The findings are the focus of today's Earthfile. Just stay with us. When rangers in Congo's Virunga National Park discovered 3-year-old baby gorilla, Theodore, tangled in a poacher's snare this month, they knew they had to act fast. Theodore's left hand was caught in the illegal trap, potentially restricting blood flow and causing infection if left unattended. But before they could do anything, they had to deal with his overprotective parents.
Over the past few weeks, we've been registering an increase in the presence of snares in the mountain gorilla sector of Virunga. And then, unfortunately, last Friday, one of the gorillas was caught in one of those snares.
The rangers sedated Theodore's mother, distracted his 600-pound silverback father, laid the furry baby on the leafy jungle floor and got to work.
There was a lot of commotion. The silverback wasn't happy, but they were able to act fast and effectively enough to be able to remove the snare and apply antibiotics treatment to the baby gorilla. So it was very successful, but nonetheless quite a risky, stressful operation because of the size and agitation of this 600-pound silverback gorilla.
Procedures like these are common in Democratic Republic of Congo's Virunga Park, a vast wonderland of deep forests, glaciers and volcanoes, with more species of birds, reptiles and mammals than any other protected area in the world. But they are under threat.
So for communities that are living, for the large part, in extreme poverty, that's extremely hard to bear, and they have to find alternatives. And unfortunately, wild meat, poaching, is one of those alternatives.
The economic impact of COVID-19 has caused a spike in poaching, threatening the habitat of more than half the world's mountain gorillas, just as rangers are forced to reduce their presence to shield the animals from the virus.
Gorillas are genetically very close to human beings. They share most of our DNA, over 98%. The scientific advice that we've been receiving has consistently indicated that we have to be extremely cautious because of the risk of disease transmission, which could wipe out the entire population of mountain gorillas.
In April, suspected Hutu militiamen killed 16 people, including 12 rangers in Virunga National Park, in the deadliest attack in Virunga's recent history. The 7,800 square kilometer area was closed to tourists in March to help stop the spread of the coronavirus to the local community and the great apes. Higher food prices, fewer job opportunities, and a collapse of tourism revenues mean people living in and around the park have had to turn to the forest to survive, finding alternatives such as hunting for bushmeat. As for Theodore, he had a lucky escape. His operation was a success. But not many animals have been as lucky as Theodore. The trafficking of pangolins, a reclusive, nocturnal mammal covered in scales that are used in traditional Chinese medicine, have increased.
The World Wildlife Crime Report 2020 has some good news and some bad news. We have seen in some of the selected species that we have analyzed in details, we see some shrinking in some markets, particularly the ivory and the rhino market, but we actually see huge increases in other markets, like the market of illicit trafficking of pangolin, in the European eels, but also in tiger parts, and also in rosewood, where we continue to see a displacement in terms of species that feed the legal market of furniture.
The causes of these shifts are likely multiple, and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime was guarded in identifying the forces behind illegal trades that are opaque by definition, often involving poaching in Africa and smuggling to Asia, where China is the biggest market.
And where we see also, looking at seizure, that the trafficking was concentrated more on meat. Now we see that the trafficking has shifted to scales, so feeding a different type of market, that is the medicinal market in Asia, and also the shifting in terms of sourcing. And since now the pangolin are sourced from mainly Africa, and in different countries in Africa, and we see here an increasing role, for example, Nigeria as a transit countries of pangolin trafficking from Africa to Asia.
Seizures of pangolin scales, mainly sourced in Africa, increased tenfold between 2014 and 2018, as trafficking moved away from pangolin meat, which was mainly seized in Asia. In that time, 185 tons of scales were seized, for which roughly 370,000 animals would have been killed.
The trafficking of pangolin is going in the opposite direction from the ivory, where we see that even between 2014 and 2018, only in these 5 years, more than 370,000 pangolins have been seized. So a minimum of 370,000 pangolins died just as identified by the authorities, but the real number of pangolin that died, that fed the illicit market, is much bigger. So that gives a magnitude of how this is raising.
For ivory, a supply glut combined with a shift in attitudes because of the Chinese and other bans may be among the factors that contributed to the fall in poaching and prices. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime said that the price of illegal ivory in China fell by more than half between 2014 and 2018. The UN estimates the annual income generated by ivory trafficking between 2016 and 2018 at $400 million.
One of the main reasons that we see is the decrease in demand, particularly in Asia and particularly in China, where clearly surveys done in terms of the use of ivory in retail markets has decreased. China has also put forward a very important legislation that is a ban on ivory selling in all China, that may also have an impact on this decrease, even if the decrease in the market was visible before this decrease was put in place, around where we started to see a decline in poaching and in price, but also demand is and also in the seizure that are an indicator of trafficking around 2011 and 2013.
Research shows that 50% of the world's wildlife has been lost in the past 40 years. Internet of Elephants wants to get millions of people to the facts and contribute in their own way towards reversing the damage. Taking a selfie with the world's most poached animal. Conservationists hope this interaction can help humans around the world care more about endangered species like the pangolin. The app is called Safari Central. It was created by social entrepreneur Internet of Elephants, whose plan is to make conservation fun for anyone. Safari Central allows people to interact with augmented reality versions of various animals in the user's own environment.
It's an app that allows users to connect to animals in the wild, and we do this using augmented reality. So we have digital versions of animals that are living currently in the wild, and people can take photos with them and share them with their friends, and in the process get to know a little bit more about the species that we have included in our game at the moment.
Other animals on the app are an elephant, a grizzly bear, a jaguar, a black rhino, and Madagascar's lemur.
We chose the animals because we wanted to have a good mix of iconic species that everyone recognizes, and also a few animals like the pangolin, which many people might not be familiar with, but are also at risk.
The pangolin, a small mammal covered in hard shell-like scales, has been hunted to near extinction. Found in Africa and Asia, the scales are used in traditional remedies for ailments such as asthma, rheumatism, and arthritis. They are also hunted for their meat. This pangolin lives in the Kalahari Desert and is named Rockstar. It is currently under study by researchers from South Africa. Rockstar is the most popular animal on Safari Central. Researcher Wendy Pignano seems to think it's because of the animal's personality.
She's a really cool pangolin. She's shy, but once you introduce yourself slowly and you work with her and you follow her, she comes out of her shell quite nicely. And she doesn't have a family that I know of yet, but hopefully in the near future she will.
The information gathered by Pignano and other researchers, like what they do at night and during the day, goes into the app. Stories about the animals are part of the experience, and developers are able to track how many times users click on the information tabs to learn more.
It's an awareness tool that has incredible value for endangered and protected species. And I think that's a key thing in terms of the feedback that we're getting, is this awareness that's being generated via the app, and that's very important to us.
Internet of Elephants is also planning to release a game version of the app this year that is similar to Pokemon Go, using wild animals. The game will use GPS data of animals' movements sourced from researchers and Safari Central partners, then challenge players to find them in their own city.
The game itself will involve following animals in your own city. So we take real animal data and transpose it onto any city in the world, and the user can then follow these animals as if they were in the wild.
Globally, poaching and associated illegal wildlife trade is devastating populations of iconic wildlife species such as rhinos and elephants, as well as a host of lesser-known ones. Across West and Central Africa, illegal wildlife trade is a particular concern for elephants, timber, great apes, pangolins, birds, reptiles, and medicinal plants. It is also a major focus of current conservation concern and policy development. Illegal wildlife trade is believed to be the world's fourth most valuable illicit commerce after drugs, human trafficking, and the arms trade. In financial terms, some estimates put the worth of illicit wildlife and plant trade at between 8 billion euros and 20 billion euros annually, while some have placed the estimate at between $15 billion and $20 billion, or $10 billion and $23 billion per year. However, despite this recognition, the emphasis to date is discussions and in implementation has been strongly on strengthening government-led law enforcement and reducing consumer demand for illicitly sourced wildlife commodities. Considerably less emphasis has been placed on the role of the indigenous peoples and local communities who live with wildlife. Moreover, some recent commitments, such as the one stemming from the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, Johannesburg Action Plan, do mention the need to combat illegal wildlife trade, but do not recognize the strong role of indigenous peoples and local communities. Poaching and illegal wildlife trafficking had reached unprecedented levels, robbing local communities of their livelihoods and eroding the global commons. Experts warn that there are no magic remedies to the problems of illegal wildlife trade other than a principled determination of the different levels of national governments to faithfully implement the mix of different solutions and strategies that had been put to the fore and already being implemented to some extent.
It's a multifaceted issue. The government has its blame, the society in general, we all have our blames because everybody, we are not looking at the bigger picture. Even by the time you try to tell people, encourage them to do what is right, they now say, now you sabi pass. And that kind of statement, you know, that kind of statement, oh, is that what we will chop? And things like that. So all those nonchalant attitude usually makes us to suffer. So it's an all-encompassing issues. We have economic issues, we have social issues, sometimes even religious issues, I know conflict issues, and all of this is further complicated by climate change, which is real. And a lot of people are denying it, but it's real. Because by the time you talk about climate change, there are a lot of things that are changing. Rainfall patterns are changing, and the duration, the timing is changing. So a lot of things are being affected. And when that changes, there will be forced migration. And when there's forced migration, because you are not going to a vacuum, you are going to where someone or some group of people are already occupying. And when there's that resource sharing, which usually the dialogue is not very much, it just happens, and before you know it, there's conflict. So by the time we see the interconnectivity of all of this, it helps us to be able to realize the problem, and then we'll be able to tackle it from all dimensions.
Despite the promulgation of the Endangered Species Act in 1985 and Nigeria's adherence to all the international treaties and protocols for the protection of the environment, positive action, real effective action, and expenditure on environmental conservation in the country had been negligible. Forest resources are known to provide employment for over 2 million people through supply of firewood and poles, and more than 80,000 people also work in the log processing industries, especially in the forest zone of the southwest Nigeria. The Nigerian Conservation Foundation says it is certain that Green Recovery Nigeria is a grand project to remedy the situation. The overall goal of this project is to firmly establish a forest rehabilitation scheme in 25% of Nigeria's total land mass from 2017 to 2047, while simultaneously promoting actions to curb deforestation and forest degradation.
I talked about the map of Nigeria where you could see the forest cover changing over time and projecting forward. We have a plan to visit selected states in Nigeria and show them their map, where they were 20, 30 years ago, where they are today and where they're going to, and ginger them to say that, look, Project X to make your land arable, it will benefit you because your land is now economic. The trees, you need to protect it. We need that forest cover. And if we can get the state governments interested and we can get matching funding from overseas donors or local donors, I believe we can get something started.
A forestry assessment launched by the Food and Agriculture Organization is an innovative and easy-to-use digital format, the most comprehensive forestry assessment to date. The Global Forest Resources Assessment Report is available for public viewing, and its first ever online interactive dissemination platform contains detailed regional and global analysis for 236 countries and territories.
Of course, a report like this has a number of new findings, but let me highlight 3 of them. First of all, the forest area loss and the deforestation are slowing down, which is a great news. But we are still losing 4.7 million hectares per forest. Most of that loss happens in sub-Saharan Africa and in South America, but also in Southeastern Asia we still lose about 1 million hectares of forest every year. The second is that the area of forest found within legally established protected areas is increasing. And in fact, it has now reached 18%. This is good news because that means that the Aichi Biodiversity Target 11 of protecting 17% of terrestrial ecosystems has been met for forests. And finally, the area of forest under sustainable management plans is increasing.
More than half, that is, about 54% of the world's forests are in only 5 countries. The Russian Federation, with 815 million hectares, has 20%. Brazil hosts 12%, Canada 9%. The United States of America has 8% with 310 million hectares, and China owns 220 million hectares. The rest of the world share the remaining 46% of the forest.
The Global Forest Resources Assessment is the most comprehensive assessment of forest resources, their management and uses that exists. It's actually the only one that covers more than 60 different variables altogether. So the Global Forest Resources Assessment is the reference against which all the other forest resource information is being compared, and it is the reference also that is being used to support many international processes, and as, for example, the Rio Conventions, the Convention on Biological Diversity, Convention on Climate Change, and so on and so forth.
The key findings of the assessment indicate that the world has a total forest area of 4.06 billion hectares, which is about 31% of the total land area. Europe, including Russian Federation, accounts for 25% of the world's forest area, followed by South America with 21%, North and Central America 19%, Africa 16%, Asia has 15%, and Oceania with 5%.
The Global Forest Resource Assessment is the only comprehensive global analysis on the condition, management, and use of forest resources. It helps to track progress on a number of international commitments, including the Sustainable Development Goals. Forest, covering about a third of the Earth's land surface, is an important link between people and planet. The health of our forests are connected to the health of our air, our water, our food, our future. Today we know that as sustainable management grows, deforestation decreases. My message to you today: let's use what we know to ensure action that leads to long-term sustainable management of our world's forests.
The global forest area continues to decrease, and the world has lost 178 million hectares. Since 1990, an estimated 420 million hectares of forest has been lost worldwide through deforestation and conversion of forests to other land use, such as agriculture.
The rate of deforestation has declined substantially and is now down to 10 million hectares per year from the 16 million hectares per year in the 1990s. However, in this case too, the rate of decline is decelerating. So while it is good to see both net forest area loss and deforestation slowing, we need to worry that the pace of that decline is easing off. Urgent action is needed to strengthen the positive trends of reduced forest loss and deforestation in order to meet the objective of halting deforestation under Sustainable Development Goal 15, life on land.
Over 80% of the world's terrestrial biodiversity can be found in forests, from pine trees in the boreal north to the rainforests in the tropics. The degradation and loss of forests threaten the survival of many species and reduce the ability of forests to provide essential services such as clean air and water, healthy soils for agriculture and climate regulation, as well as protect the transmission of diseases from animals to humans. Researchers have found out that when wildlife are poached from their natural habitats, butchered and sold illegally, the potential for transmission of diseases from animals to humans is increased. Zoonotic diseases represent up to 75% of all emerging infectious diseases, and it includes COVID-19. The products offered from the trafficked species for human consumption, by definition, escape any hygiene or sanitary control. As such, they pose even greater risk of infectious diseases. That's our program for the week. Thank you for your time. We hope to see you next week. From me, Ayola Kasim, and the Earthfile crew here in Lagos, it's bye for now.